Another live stream. Today, I have a really special person who's going to come and talk to us about a number of things. So I would really love to introduce him. So Lee Nallalingham is an international best-selling author, speaker, and leader, and he's been leading teams for nearly 20 years. He's got a great track record across HR, technology, and business transformation. And he's led departments in excess of 60 people and project managed teams in excess of 150 people, delivered a huge amount of annual cost savings to the tune of about $250 million, just coming out of efficiencies, increase in revenue generation, and successfully delivered 5 integrations following mergers and acquisitions in the companies that he's been with. He's worked across 6 continents, and that's really beneficial because a lot of the cross-cultural nuance that you will see coming out of this conversation will be coming off real solid grounds. He's worked with 70 countries and over 100 multinational clients. So this is amazing to have Lee with us today. Thank you, Lee, for coming in and speaking with our audience.
Oh, thank you for having me. And you make me sound more impressive than I am. I'm just a guy.
You know what I usually say, that if you have to make an effort and you start to get winded, that means the person's really good.
Well, thank you. I'll try and live up to that introduction over the course of this session.
I'm sure it will be great for all our viewers who are tuning in. So maybe we can start with a little bit about how you see the trends that are evolving in the space of talent and future of work. And this is a really hot topic, so I'm really keen to get your take on it.
Yeah, so, look, we can't talk about what's happening now without using I hate buzzwords, but the Great Resignation, right? Why is it happening? And I don't know if we were connected before the start of the pandemic, but at the start of the pandemic, I did this really big post comparing what was going to play out post-pandemic to what happened in Europe at the end of the Black Death, right? So when I did a post at the time, a lot of people were like, that's nuts. How can you compare that to what's happening now?
Yeah.
But just bear with me as I walk through the analogy. So what happened is obviously Black Death, terrible. 50% of Europe's population wiped out. Fortunately, COVID was not that severe, so great news, although obviously if people were affected by it, it's obviously still not great for them, so wishes with them and so on. But what happened back then was there was a system of hierarchy. Obviously, there wasn't really proper businesses back then, but there was this concept of the serf. And so in Europe, it was quite common that you had your king or your queen, you had your landowners, and then you basically had everyone else. And they just worked on the land, and their job was to plow the fields, make, whatever. They were allowed to keep a very small amount. And then the rest went to the landowner who sold it for money or whatever. And, that's the way that society was structured. What happened, and if you look at the socioeconomic status or the way who had the money and the wealth at that time, Western Europe was poor, which is very hard for us to now grasp in the now live in. But Britain was a backwater. France was not France or whatever. The wealth was the Roman Empire disintegrated, and then you had what was then it broke into the Western Empire and the Eastern Empire. The Western Empire completely fell away, and then you had what became Byzantium and whatever else, and that was where the wealth was. And fast forward 200, 300 years after the Black Death, and it was completely reversed, and Western Europe won everything. And part of the crux of this is how the countries decided to operate in the post-Black Death world. So what happened was, because 50% of the population disappeared, all of a sudden there weren't enough workers to work the land. And so what happened in the UK primarily led the way, and then France and a few other Western countries also followed suit, was there was workers' revolts. Because what happened was this landowner started offering, instead of just giving me and my family enough money, they were like, actually, we'll give you extra food. Like, I don't have enough workers. Come work for us. I'll give you better conditions. And this happened all around Europe. And there were revolts, and the landowners tried to crush the rebellions and so on. And basically Europe split into two as to how they approached this. The traditional leading empires of Byzantium and Eastern Europe and so on crushed the revolts and forced everyone to go back to how things were. Western Europe, on the other hand, went, yeah, okay, we kind of get it. And then you fast forward what happened over the next few hundred years and the amount of innovation that took place and so on. And as a result of that, there was only one winner, and it was Western Europe. Western Europe called up by like the 15th, century or so on, and by the end, it, gone way ahead. And so I did this post a couple of years ago and said that's what's going to happen again now. Obviously, hopefully, without 50% of the population dying. But what's going to happen is that organizations are going to be faced with a choice of going back to how things were or accepting the new reality and adapting. And that's what we're seeing play out at the moment with this great resignation. We are seeing that talent have now realized, hold on a minute, we've got a choice here. I don't have to go now. My employer may force me to come to the office 9 to 5 and I have to spend 2 hours commuting every day again. And, I can't now pick my kids up from school in that 15-minute break in between, meetings or so on. Or I can go work for this company over here that are actually offering me flexible working. And that's really what we're seeing play out here. One of the things I talk about in my second book, the Manager Handbook, in the chapter around managing remote workforces, is this shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone, because before the pandemic started, 90% of workers said they want flexible working, right? 100% remote work from home. No, not everyone wants that. If people like the social element, they just want the option. Look, if I've just got a load of meetings today, I don't need to come into the office if they're all on Zoom. But hey, we want to do a workshop, sure, let's come in. Let's come in, let's have a team lunch, let's do all of that stuff. But it was very, very clear from the outset that this is what workers have wanted for decades. It's not new. And what we've seen play out now over the past 2 years, and we're going to see continue to play out over the next 3 to 5, is this divergence between organizations. And we're already seeing, for every Tesla saying that they're going to make everyone come back into the office, which, to be fair, to an extent makes sense because they're making cars, so you probably need to be in a factory for that, versus your Airbnbs that are just like, yo, why do we need to have you in the office? So you're going to see that play out. But what's interesting is the number of organizations, or management teams more accurately, that want to bury their head in the sand, because research has shown for over 20 years that working from home is more productive. There are hundreds, thousands of pieces of research on this, going all the way back to the late 1990s, when there were 4 million remote workers in the US. Because, the internet had started, there were VPNs for the first time, early 2000s, Skype was a thing, so it became really, really easy. And it's been shown, obviously there were some studies that show that it's not as effective, but just with climate change, there's research that shows that climate change isn't a thing, right? But out of the 10,000 pieces of research or whatever, there's like 20 that show that it isn't. And depending on who you are, you either want to pick, well, these 20 show that it isn't, so I'm not going to believe it. It's the same thing with remote working. Overwhelmingly productive in comparison. And in my book, I actually quote some of the business results of the past couple of years. So if we take the Fortune 500, in 2020, despite global lockdowns, half the workforce not being able to work, 70% of the Fortune 500 made more money than they made in 2019.
That's huge.
You can't argue with that. Like, you can dress it up as much as you want. That's a fact.
That's true. That's true.
It's not limited to the US or the UK or Singapore or China. It's global.
That's true. I really like two things that you said, and I want to pick those up, and I want to go a little bit deeper because that's also the deep context that you bring to this conversation. One is the fact that there was always a desire for people to have flexibility. Mm-hmm. And of course, there is this huge mindset shift or reset that has happened with a forced lockdown and a forced work from home, because people have started to realize that. So I think that's one great part. It's now backed up with what you just said, that businesses did make more money in this particular scenario where we were most worried about it. It actually turns out that businesses ended up making money, which is a great testament to the hypothesis or the studies that have shown that we are more productive when we have me time. It's a lot more focus, less distraction, a lot of people not coming in and knocking at your door or just standing by you and chit-chatting. So that's great. The second piece that I really am interested to explore with you more is this head in the sand business, right? Because this mindset is really hard for managers, because managers tend to believe, and this is a belief system that has come in over the generations, that managers are paid to manage, and the way to manage is to control, right? Now, it's true. In a certain way, they are providing discipline, they are providing structure, they are providing guidance, clarity, purpose, all of those granted. The question that I really always like to ask is, what are you controlling? And I would really like to get your thoughts, especially given the fact that you are huge on manager enablement and you've done a lot of work in there. Could you help some of our viewers understand the paradigm shifts that are happening in the managing space?
Yeah. So, fundamentally, it comes down to the way I articulate this best is, let's take an accountant, just a generic job that anyone can relate to. May not know how to calculate the accounts, but they know roughly what an accountant does. Do you pay your accountant to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day and calculate the numbers, or do you pay them to prepare the accounts? Therefore, does it matter if it takes them 160 hours, 40-hour work weeks, 160 hours a month to prepare the accounts, or, do you celebrate them because they can do it in 20, right? But if they can do it in 20, and this is where it comes down to manager capability, and we'll talk about this in a little bit as well, just a lot of managers not having the required capability to actually manage, because managers are not promoted on their ability, or hired or promoted into management on their ability to manage. They're recognized as great individual contributors, and they're like, great, you're in charge. And what makes someone a great individual contributor is their ability to do it well themselves, not necessarily to coach a load of other people, right? Which is why if you look at sport, for example, how many great, there's a reason Sachin Tendulkar has never been an effective cricket coach, right? Because to be fair, what makes him absolutely amazing, he can't teach that.
That's true. That's true.
Right? And the same thing for so many other sports. I'm using cricket because obviously I'm talking to you, but, it's the same thing. Like there's a Zinedine Zidane in football, for example, or a Pep Guardiola, but those are exceptions to the rule. You take a Jose Mourinho or a Jurgen Klopp, they didn't play the sport at a high level. Nor did Arsene Wenger, or, the ability to coach is not dependent on your ability to be a great executor. So there's that kind of shift, and then it's tying it into, why do you hire people? Is it to deliver outcomes, or is it to deliver people to just spend time at desk? And I summarize some of this in my book as the debate around job versus career as well, for individuals and how they look at what they do. And ultimately, the best organizations are ones that understand they pay for output, not input. And one of the best examples of this is actually Henry Ford. Because people think this is a modern problem. This is not a modern problem. As we just discussed, they were discussing this at the time of the Black Death. This is a problem that's really easy to solve for centuries. But for centuries, 90% of folks, they have a selfish, in my book, I speak about the principle of shifting from I want to I can provide.
Yeah, the servant leadership model. Absolutely.
And look, within that doesn't mean people think that means you bend over backwards and just give into anything. That's not the case. But what are you offering in return? And so Henry Ford, if you don't think about the early 1900s as a time of great employee experience and worker rights. Henry Ford built his organization on paying his people more to work less. And when he did that at the time, the average wage for a car manufacturer, factory worker person was, I think, $2.50 a day. And he decided to pay them $5 a day. And it was traditional for people to work in 2 shifts of 12 hours. And he decided to pay them $5 a day, but have everyone only work in shifts of 8 hours. So it actually increased his cost base, more workers, but they all worked only 8 hours a day in 3 separate shifts. And the result of that is everyone knows Henry Ford's name, and no one knows the names of very, very few other. At the time, there was thousands and thousands. It's a bit like now with blockchain, or in the early 2000s with internet. There were all of these thousands of companies that no one's ever heard of. Yeah, but the ones you've heard of. And it was put in that principle of output. He would pay his people more to work slightly less hours, but the reason for that was that the quality of work done in that time was significantly better. As a result of paying twice as much as anyone else, he had his pick of talent. Like the people that didn't work for him were the ones who weren't good enough and they want to work for everyone else. And that's really the fundamental shift in management that we're going through now. Again, is we have a lot of people who've been promoted on their ability to do, but they lack the business or commercial understanding to, understand a very basic principle. I think it's Richard Branson who says it best. He's like, everyone now wants to talk about being customer centric. But do you think your employees are going to look after your customers if they're not well treated?
It's true.
Right? If you don't treat your people well, the good talent will leave because the good talent has options.
That's true. And they are the first ones to go. And they are the ones that would probably find the best jobs in the market. And what you would be left with is probably not going to help you move your company much forward.
And that's what we're seeing play out now is, look, the best talent will have options, and the businesses that continue to thrive over the next 5-10 years and definitely into the 2030s will be the ones that get this. But here's the honest truth is we can talk about this, we can show the evidence, we can show the research. This isn't a COVID problem. Let's say 20 years of research before COVID to prove this was going to happen if we move to this model of work. Hundreds of years of case studies on, being employee-centric and managing people on output, not input, also being the most effective way. The organizations that adapt will thrive, but for most, what this has really done though, and there was a CNBC piece of research, I think it was earlier this year, which showed that for every one employee that wants to go back to the office, 3 managers want their people back in the office. Yeah. Right? And honestly, what's happened, and this makes me unpopular when I say this to a room of senior leaders a lot of the time, is a lot of the managers are being found out, and leaders, because most of our leaders aren't leaders. They may have a leadership title, but the truth is they're managers. Yeah. Right? And there's always this confusion, I've got a title, therefore I'm a leader. No, being a leader is a lot more than a job title. Is that they're not doing anything. They're not providing any value. So what's happened in this current world is they've realized, hold on a minute, people are going to start to realize my team are delivering results and I'm not actually providing any value, right? And you talk to the teams and it becomes really evident as to which managers were managing properly and which managers aren't. And it's not about tracking tasks and making sure they're at the office for certain hours and approving annual leave. It's spending all of the time on coaching, on development, on, the things that managers are supposed to do. Those are the unquantifiable to a lot, but the teams know which ones are doing it.
True. I think there has been a significant shift in expectations. And I think we can attribute that to a number of different things. We can attribute it to the pandemic. We can attribute it to remote, hybrid, asynchronous working. We can also attribute it to a shift in the way that the multi-generational workforce is moving. And so the generations which are now entering the workforce, or which are now probably just at the cusp of being a manager, have very different expectations. This was really an interesting conversation, Lee. One last question for you. How would you like people to reach out to you? Where can they find you? How would you like them to reach out to you if they wanted to collaborate or pick your brains? What's the best way for...
Cool. As with anyone, look, go find me on LinkedIn. I've got, 30-something thousand people already on LinkedIn do it. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, all of the usual social media stuff. We've got, I see my name above your head there. We've got my name here. We can just go find me, pop me a note. You can follow my content, Nallalingham.com. There's 240-something articles for free, no charge, that you can read. I'm on Amazon with books and so on, but yeah, just go find me. I'm easy to find if someone wants to find me.
Yeah, I think it's not that difficult. And thank you for coming in and speaking to our viewers. It was a great pleasure. And I hope to welcome you back again with the launch of your 3rd book. So hopefully you'll come and speak to us about that as well.
Oh, happy to do so. And thank you for having me.
All right.
Bye.